Chapter 30. Fast years of long, slow days. I reached Jerry's house in the late afternoon. Simon and Caleb's apartment had been my jump-off point in East Lansing after Dan no longer had his house. Jerry's house was my spot on the opposite side of the city. Though Dan was only around sporadically by May of 2020, I was most likely to run into him at Jerry's house. I first met Jerry at Dan's house the previous year. Jerry was a gay guy in his mid-20s. I didn't know how Dan knew Jerry. One morning in 2019, I woke up in Dan's living room and Jerry was there. Jerry and I ended up in a lengthy conversation about how he needed to process and manage his feelings from his fiancée dying in a recent car accident. Though I had no interest in anything sexual with Jerry, I could tell he was into me. I made it clear that the feeling was completely one-sided. He conceded the issue, but he also asked me for a favor. I listened to his proposal, and I told him that I was willing to help him out. Dan told me, "You're well-versed in the weird and taboo. I've always had a fantasy I haven't tried." "I can do that for you. I'll make it happen. I'm gonna video it." I told Jerry I'd be ready in about 30 minutes. I told him I'd let him know when it was time. Jerry went into Dan's bedroom. I went to the kitchen and filled up an empty 2-liter soda bottle with water from the sink. I drank half of it right away. I managed to drink the other half 10 minutes later. Another 10 more minutes and I felt ready to go. I did all I could to hold off for yet another 10 minutes. Finally, I could take it no longer. I knocked on Dan's bedroom door. "Jerry, let's go. I don't care if you keep your clothes on or not, but you need to get in the bathtub quickly. I can't wait any longer." I set my phone on the windowsill in Dan's bathroom. Jerry stripped and got on his knees in the bathtub. Afterwards, he thanked me for the experience. I zipped up and walked out of the bathroom without saying anything. Later, I sent Jerry a copy of the video. He replied with one word: hot. I continued to see Jerry periodically at Dan's house. Jerry and Dan made money streaming live videos on a social media platform. They had a makeshift studio in Dan's basement, which they utilized to make content. When Dan lost his house, they moved the studio to Jerry's basement. Dan moved into Jerry's house. When I arrived at Jerry's house on the evening I recovered my wallet, there was already a group of people there, friends and others I knew. They were all preparing food and setting up to have a cookout and bonfire that night. I settled in. Other people continued to arrive for the cookout at Jerry's house. Though Ashley had her own business going on, due to the quality of my product, she was always a customer of mine for personal use. I sat with Dan, Ashley, and Brittany in an upstairs bedroom. Hot rail after hot rail consumed off my silver serving tray. While certain other people trickled in and out of the bedroom that evening, anyone I didn't know remained outside at the bonfire. I had no desire to interact with people I didn't know, and my friends were well aware. I spent the following afternoon with Luke in a parking lot in Lansing, replacing a valve on the fuel line of Luke's car. We finished the repairs as the sky was almost dark and the mosquitoes were out in full effect. Both of us were sweaty and dirty from the work we had done. Luke told me to follow him in my car. We had a stop to make before we reached our next destination that night. After we picked up what we needed to pick up, Luke and I each drove our own cars to the destination for the night. As I parked my car on the street behind Luke, he got out of his car and jumped into my passenger seat. Luke had also heard the gunshots as we were parking on the street. 2 more shots rang out, and the 2 of us slumped lower in our seats. Silence filled the air for a moment. Luke and I decided to stay in the car and stay low. Moments later, we heard police sirens approaching from behind us. I sat up after the lights and sirens passed by my car. I saw 2 police cars blaze around a corner 2 streets up from where I was parked, the area where the shots came from. The sirens cut off, but the red and blue flashing lights continued to reflect off the houses 2 blocks in front of us. Before we stepped from the car, Luke told me a story. He was convinced he had been given a hot shot by an associate the day before he entered rehab 9 months prior. The hot shot was a syringe of heroin designed to cause him to overdose. Luke was sure someone wanted him out of the way. "Who was with you that night?" "Brad was there. I'm almost totally sure he knew ahead of time about the hot shot." Luke and I both stepped from my car and walked up to the side door of Brad's house. His story echoed in my brain as we walked up to Brad's door. Though Luke was convinced there was nothing to worry about, I still wasn't fully comfortable knowing that Brad had known about it, the person who was supposed to be his best friend. The story was just one of many examples of the scene in Lansing, Michigan, examples which I either had heard from others or witnessed myself. I knew I was close to being out of that scene forever, and I didn't want anything to come between me and that goal. Though I'd never seen the process before, I knew what it meant to shake a bottle. I had never needed to be involved in any sort of manufacturing. I was also never in need of small quantities of crystal. I had sampled multiple friends' different personal supplies of shake and bake on occasions. Sometimes the quality was surprisingly good. The chunky powder even approached the lower end of my exceptionally high standards for the large crystal rocks I always dealt with. I had also never seen the manufacturing process of those large crystal rocks. I was always on, but I was one step removed from the initial creation. As I sat and watched Luke's friends shake a bottle, I did hot rails of my brand. Whether their final product would manage to register on my radar of quality didn't matter. I wasn't going to be there a few hours later to try it out. I had a trip to take that night to pick up more of what was guaranteed to be top tier. As I sat and watched the beginnings of what would get Luke and his friends high in my absence, I began to think about my routine of traveling around the country. I shook off my daydreams of travel. My trip that night was business. Those trips were straight to the point. Rarely did I detour at all on those business trips, on those first legs to my destination. Return trips, once I re-upped, often involved many stop-offs to deliver. As those in the house were lounging around, and while one of Luke's friends was hard at work manufacturing future drugs, I stood up and wished everyone a good night. I let Luke know I would be back the next day. I walked to the door to leave. As I stepped out to the front yard, I heard footsteps behind me. I felt Jade's hand on my shoulder. My eyes met hers. I couldn't help but think, in that moment, how pretty her eyes were. I had met Jade a couple of nights prior. Jade knew one of the guys in the house. When she showed up in the living room, seemingly out of nowhere, Luke and I were in awe of her oddly outgoing and bubbly personality. Jade was tall and beautiful. She had an undefinable quality about her. She didn't seem to fit in with the rest of the usual crowd. All the people in her presence seemed to vie for her attention. Jade was drawn to me from the beginning, partly because I didn't fawn over her like everyone else. Gushing was never my style. Luke pulled me aside that first night to let me know how interestingly hot he found her. I agreed with him completely. "Where are you going? Can I go with you?" I thought about both of the questions Jade just asked me. I was lost in her beauty as we stood face to face. It may have been my weakness at that moment, but I already decided to let the scene unfold to its logical conclusion. I knew full well that I was breaking one of my cardinal rules when it came to my security involving the drug business, but I gave in to the moment. "I have to make a run. I won't be back until tomorrow." "I want to go with you." "All right, I'm leaving right now. Let's go." On the way down south, Jade and I stopped off at my storage unit in Perrysburg. Jade was an impulsive person. She saw an electric hair trimmer in my storage unit. She told me she had thought about shaving the sides of her hair all the way around her head. 15 minutes after that, we both got back in my car. Jade had a new haircut. After the two of us shot crystal, I got back on track. Jade and I were gone from Michigan for a full 24 hours. We stayed in a hotel. We shared intimacy, we made some videos, and we stayed extremely high. On the return drive, I questioned my lapse in security for bringing someone along with me to a source. Later on, after returning to Lansing, I found out my worries were justified, but in a completely separate way than I had anticipated. The ordeal which took place in Lansing in my absence that night was yet another dodged bullet, another confirmation it was time to leave the city for good. When Jade and I arrived back to Brad's house that next day, I could tell that something had happened in the time I had been away. Luke pulled me aside and told me what went down. Luke told me a story about associates showing up and trapping out of Brad's house with them until they sold all their drugs. Then the associates drugged and robbed Luke, Brad, and their friends. I looked around Brad's living room. The living room no longer had a television or a stereo. Luke, Brad, and a couple other friends no longer had their wallets either. Luke and his friends had been drugged and robbed. I too had been robbed in that same span of time. I realized it later that day while at Caleb and Simon's apartment. I noticed one of the compartments of my bag was inexplicably empty. I thought back to a week prior. MSM, methyl sulfonamethane. A supplement sold over the counter at drugstores. Luke and I walked the aisles of a pharmacy. Luke had me pick up a bottle of MSM. Was your arthritis acting up? There's another use for MSM. Trust me, you'll see. After I spent a couple of hours at Brad's house with Luke, he dropped a bag into my lap. What's this? It looks real, doesn't it? Yeah. It's an ounce. It's yours for buying me that bottle of MSM. I don't want that. I have real drugs. I don't want fake drugs. Luke, Brad, and their friends had a plan. They had been shorted money on a transaction a while back. They used MSM to make fake crystal. They set up a deal with the people who shorted them. They planned to sell the fake crystal to recover their losses. As always, I wanted no part in it. I gathered up my belongings. I had other places to be. I put the fake ounce in my bag in a separate compartment from all of my legit ounces. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I was sure I would never sell it. I then forgot about it. The main compartment of my bag was still full, filled with the weight I had just picked up, the exact amount I had just picked up. The smaller compartment, the zipper compartment with that single ounce bag of fake MSM crystal that Luke had given me, it was empty. During my time with Jade on the trip, she had robbed me. She managed to get an ounce from me, an ounce of crystal, the only fake ounce of crystal ever in my possession. I smiled. Jade had tried. All she had managed to accomplish was to rid me of a useless item, a novelty I was never going to use for anything. I called Luke to warn him to be wary of Jade should he see her again in the future. She had sticky fingers. I was still in Lansing. I wished to be anywhere else. I needed work done on the exhaust system of my Lexus. I needed to put pressure on Dan to do the work. The hourglass had been flipped over long ago, and the sand was running out. I didn't want to be there when those last grains of sand fell.